Looking for a podcast where you can hear from some of the great hockey legends, hear them tell some great stories, find out what they're up to today? Well, this is it. It's the Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Reda. Today's guest, a three-time Stanley Cup champion. He won with the Flames, the Stars, and the New Jersey Devils. Won Olympic Gold at Salt Lake City. Was just the second player ever to score 50 or more as a rookie. Was named one of the top 100 players of all time. Inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2011. Our buddy Joey Nieuwendyk. Joey, it is so good to see you, buddy. Last time I saw you was at the Hall. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Gino. Thanks for having me on today.
I like your background. It looks like you're up somewhere like a lake house, a cottage. Where are you at now?
Yeah, we're still, the weather being so good and being empty nesters now, we stay at the lake a little longer. So once the snow starts to fly, which is going to be soon, then we'll make our way back to Dallas.
Joey, people might not know this, but you're a Toronto guy, and from humble beginnings. I remember when it all started for you, the Pickering Panthers. I remember the Pickering Panthers junior B team. You didn't get drafted in the O, and then when you finally did end up getting drafted by the Calgary Flames years later, after spending some time in Cornell, the headlines at Calgary read, "Joe who?" when the Flames drafted you. What was that like for you? That entire process of going unrecognized to the point where you finally landed in the NHL?
Well, you've got a good memory, Gino. That's a long time ago. I remember sitting on the couch with my mom watching the NHL draft because it wasn't a big thing to go back then, so I didn't know where I'd be drafted. And they cut away from golf to show the update on the NHL draft, and it said Joe Nieuwendyk, 27th overall to Calgary. So we were excited in my mom's living room, and no sooner did the phone call ring from I believe it was Steve Simmons, and he said, "Joe, what does it feel like to be drafted traded for a 100-point man?" Well, I didn't realize at that time that the Minnesota traded picks and whatever, and it was Kent Nilsson going the other way, and so that was the first question I got. And then you're right, the headlines in the Calgary paper, because I think they were a little upset that Kent Nilsson was leaving, and who are these young draft picks that they got? And it was Joe who with a question mark. So I do remember that. The second phone call I got was from my buddy Gary Roberts, who childhood friend, obviously, from Whitby, and drafted by Calgary the year before. So that familiarity with Gary was a real good start for me being drafted to Calgary.
And I'll tell you what, man, I still remember vividly your rookie season, 87, 88. You were on freaking fire. You went from Joe who to Joe's here. Unless I'm wrong, I think you had 32 goals in your first 42 NHL games, which you were on a pace to break Mike Bossy's NHL goal scoring record. What was that like for you when you landed there and all of a sudden, like, holy crap, I can score in this league?
Well, that's interesting, Gino. I joined the Flames in March of the 86-87 season at the end of the year there.
After wrapping up the Cornell, right?
Like a lot of college free agents do. And that little taste of it, the 9 games, really helped me because I was able to get in the lineup, have a little bit of success in those 9 games. And then so that helped me going into training camp the next year. But yeah, I think I felt confident knowing the guys. And Terry Chris came to me early on. He said, "Son, do you want to play on the power play? Do you think you can?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to." I didn't realize the beating that I was going to take in that first year standing in front of the net, but I think
you're a big guy, dude.
Yeah. Well, so was Ben Wilson in Chicago. He was a big guy too. He treated me pretty harsh at times, but I liked scoring goals. I didn't mind taking the abuse because. I give a lot of credit to our power play. We had Al McGinnis and Gary Suda, who were magicians back then. And every time Al wound up, everybody parted the Red Sea. They didn't want to get hit with that puck, but they didn't know that he was shooting for me most of the time. I had 31 power play goals my first year, mainly because of Al McGinnis.
You were on a tear, though, man. And it wasn't just a blip. You had 51 in your rookie year. You won the Calder as the rookie of the year. And you, right then in your second season, you reached 100 goals in your first 141 games. At that point, only Mike Bossy and Rocket Richard got to 100 NHL goals faster. Did you allow yourself to sit back and go, I can't believe the way this is all happening? Or was it just happening so fast that you weren't even really thinking about the historic nature of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you're just in the moment, and I was feeling confident, feeling successful, and really didn't think about those types of things. The question after the first year in the papers was, well, sophomore jinx, can he do it again? And so I was very fortunate. I played 2 years with Håkan Lube and Gary Roberts, and we had a real good chemistry. Håkan Lube was ahead of his time as far as skill level in the NHL, and he set me up a lot. I didn't mind going around the net to sniff for some of those goals, and I just had a lot of great teammates around me that helped me achieve that success. But I didn't really think about the historic nature of it at that time. Of course, Teemu Selanne came in a few years later and blew everything out of the water. But it was so much fun though, those first few years in Calgary.
You mentioned Håkan Lube. We've had him as a guest on this show as well, and he gave us his recollections. Let me take you back to the 1989 season with the Flames. You're still just a kid. You had 10 goals helping lead the Flames to the first Stanley Cup championship, which was amazing. You actually assisted on Lanny's last goal that actually clinched the cup for you guys at the Forum in Montreal. What was it like to be a part of that run? And then when you sealed it, like no one wins the cup in Montreal other than the Habs.
Yeah, no, you're right. We're the only team to do it. and what a special night that was. And that's what I remember about that run. Of course, you're 22 years old. Gary and I remember sitting in the Montreal Forum in the locker room after and celebrating with our parents and thinking, man, this is awesome. We'll do this more often, and then it isn't until years go by in your career and you get a little long in the tooth, 10 years later, where I didn't have a chance to go for another cup. And it really made me think about how special that group was. And you talk about Lanny, but it wasn't just Lanny. It was Jim Poplinski. It was Tim Hunter. It was Rob Ramage. It was Brad McCrimmon, the veteran guys. And to see what it meant to them, I'm 22 years old. I'm thinking I can do this every year. To see what it meant to them was my biggest takeaway from looking back years after the fact. Just a storybook ending for Lanny. And it's one of my, I'm so grateful that it's my most memorable assist of my career that I got to pass it over to Lanny for his final goal.
I'm loving sharing these stories with you. You and I have known each other literally for decades. You're always been such a family guy. So when you had an opportunity to share the cup, and you had your parents in the dressing room, will you please share the story of your mom on St. Catharines? For those who don't know, St. Catharines it's a huge street in Montreal. And when the Habs win, St. Catharines goes crazy. But it was, well, you tell the story. What happened?
Yeah, well, I gave my mom my stick after we won the game, and she held it like it was her only child. My mom was my biggest fan, and she loved being in that environment, in the locker room, sipping out of the cup. We were out in the locker room for probably 2 hours that night. And then when we got on the bus to get out of there, of course, the streets were mobbed with people. We couldn't go anywhere. It was the end of the year. Everybody, whether they were frustrated or happy for us, they were all on the streets. And my mom went in the middle of the traffic, in the middle of the people, and directed traffic with my hockey stick, pushing people out of the way so that our bus could get out of there and get to the airport. So that's the type of lady she was. She loved it, and one of my greatest memories.
That was just, I've heard that story over the years, and I just needed you to tell it. What was it like for you guys when you got back to Calgary? I mean, it's one thing to celebrate in the streets of Montreal. It's one thing to celebrate on the ice of the Forum where you don't have a lot of fans. But now you go back to Calgary in a hockey loving city, in a market. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be there for the Sullies. What was that like for you to be a part of that?
Oh my gosh, incredible! Such a great hockey base, and they love their Flames. I remember just in my first 2 years there, the passion of those fans. And they lived and died with wins and losses, and especially when we played the Oilers. People in Calgary to this day have those dates circled when they play the Oilers. But to win and to really we were always the little brother of those Oilers up the road, and to finally win and bring that cup back to the city of Calgary and the parade, it's just an incredible feeling to see all those years. What year did they come over from Atlanta? 81. So it had been a long time, and for that cup to come home to Calgary was special.
Great run in Calgary, and then now I can't quite make this out. For those who are watching this on the video, is that a picture of you celebrating the cup in Dallas over your left shoulder there? Is that
that's when we won the cup in Buffalo that night at 2:30 in the morning. That was the shot one of the reporters got. So yeah, those are kind of cool.
Let's talk about your Dallas years, beginning with how you got dealt. For those who don't remember, you were traded to Dallas in December of 1995 for a deal that involved Iggy, Jerome McGinley, and Corey Millen. You had a great run with the Stars from 95 to 02. Bob Gainey was a big fan of you, big part of bringing you there. And he needed a piece like you, a proven winner, somebody who can get the job done. You dealt with a lot of injuries, though, in your initial part of Dallas. You fractured a rib cage. You had a torn ACL. You battled through a lot, man, to get back on top with the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I certainly did. And going to the trade, it was sad to leave Calgary. I mean, the reality is I instigated it because of the contract issue. But at that time, it was the band was breaking up. Al McGinnis had moved on, Gary Suter, Mike Vernon. I didn't know where I was going. I got traded the night of the trade freeze, December the 19th, and heard that it was Dallas. So to move to Dallas, and when I got there and started playing, I was, obviously half a season behind, and it was tough to catch up. It was a big adjustment for me, Gino. It wasn't going from a hockey environment like Calgary where people, breathe the wins and losses, and to go to Dallas where the fans, the building was half full. They only wanted to see a good fight that night, the Texans. But boy, did they sure grow into a hockey environment. Those years that we built, and I wasn't the only piece. Bob Gainey brought me in, but that's when Ken Hitchcock first started. We made the trade for Sergei Zubov. Daryl Sador came on board. We got Eddie Belfour. Boy, oh boy, things started to happen, and we started to see that, wow, we could be a good hockey club. And I think at that time, Mike Modano realized that as well, and he took his game to another level, and Ken Hitchcock deserves a lot of success for that. But I think surrounding Mike with the pieces like Guy Carbonneau and the Keens and all these guys that have won before, we really realized that we're building something special here.
We've had a bunch of those guys you just listed. We've had on the show. We've had Guy Carbonneau tell us the stories of what it was like to go through that. Mike Modano, just Daryl Sador, we just had this season. It was quite the cast there, man. And after you battled through all those injuries, when it came to the Stanley Cup run, you had 11 goals and 21 points, and 6 of your goals in the Cup run with Dallas were game-winning goals. Is there a time where you just feel like it's all just coming together for you? I mean, as much as you went through the struggles, where you just feel like everything you touch now turns to gold? Is that what that run was like? Because you ended up winning the Conn Smythe that year.
Well, number one, I did feel good. I felt healthy, but I'll take you back a year earlier, Gino. I blew my knee out in the first game of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and couldn't be a part of it. We had a good team the year before, and I felt so awful that I couldn't be out there with my teammates. But to come back the next year and realizing how hard it is from my past experiences 10 years earlier with Calgary, that how hard it is to get to where we need to go, that I savored every moment and took it all in. I really felt the presence of my mom, who passed away a few years earlier. Gino, you mentioned her earlier, but I really felt that. She was such a special fan of mine that pushed me and inspired me, that I felt her presence during that run. I really did. I said that then, and I'll say it today. I just felt like everything came together for me, and it was an incredible run. Our team played great, and I knew how hard it was, and it was hard. But ultimately, we brought that cup home to Dallas, and And what a great parade that was too. At a time when the Dallas Cowboys, who are the Cats Meow in the city of Dallas, they were not as good at that particular time. And these young blue collar guys, most of them from Canada, came in and stole the hearts of the city. And it was great to be a part of that.
I want to just follow up on something you mentioned, your mom. And I know, like I say, you're a huge family guy, and you're also a pretty private guy. So it's kind of unique that I have this opportunity to talk to you, like, one-on-one. You and I have had lots of conversations, but in a public format like this, to hear you talk like this is pretty cool, Joey. It's like, I love the fact that while you're a private guy, you like to share how important your family has been to you over years, and your mom and your loss of your mom. That's an important thing to you, isn't it?
It really is. We were an extremely tight family growing up, and I had two brothers and a sister who played in sports, and my mom was always the one out there ringing the bell and getting the parents going. So when I started my NHL career, she was on cloud nine. She lived all those years in Calgary and then passed away just after I got traded to Dallas. So she never did make it to Dallas, but I still think about her a lot. Gino, she's just had my nephew's wedding in Boston last weekend, and my brothers and I still raise a glass to her to this day. And she's been gone quite a while now, but I love my family. I love my family today. My kids are doing awesome, and I'm a big part of their lives. And this retirement that everybody asked me, when are you going to get back into hockey and stuff? I said, I missed so many years with my kids that now I get to see my son play at Canisius University, and my daughter's dancing in California, and my other daughter's working in Dallas. It's just nice to be a part of their lives.
That's awesome, buddy. That's awesome. Get ready for the game with the Domino's $8.99 mix and match deal. Score big with any medium 2-topping pizza and any 2 items like pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Domino's has you covered. Order today from Canada's favorite pizza at domino's.ca. You had a bit of a hiccup. You had your 1,000th game back in March of 2002 against the Blackhawks, and then you were just traded 2 weeks later to the New Jersey Devils. What was that transition like to go from the high of game number 1,000 to, oh, by the way, you're on the move?
Well, Gino, these are the things that the fans don't always see. We had a home in Dallas, and we had another baby on the way, so we had purchased another home about a mile away. We went on an 8-day road trip, and while we were on that trip, my wife with the moving company and a lot of the wives got all the furniture going, and everything hung on the wall. So I came home off the road at 2:00 in the morning and came into this new house. It was beautiful. I thought, man, this is awesome. And I got traded the next morning to New Jersey. So I spent one night in that house. So, and then you're on a plane right away. Jamie Langenbrunner and myself jumped on a plane, and we went and met the Devils in Chicago, back in Chicago. I remember doing a groin stretch and warm up, and Stevie Thomas looked at him and he said, didn't I just see you last night? Because, back-to-back games against the Hawks with 2 different teams. But those are things you can look back on now and chuckle, but they're not easy moments when you go through them.
Yeah, no, they're not. And especially on the family. Again, we keep coming back to family. Like you said, I didn't realize, I knew it was a quick turnaround after your 1,000 game. I didn't realize it was day one in your new house. That your wife must just went, come on, seriously?
Yeah, but she's a trooper. We packed up the kids and dogs, and Jamie Langenbrunner did the same. We all lived in a house together with small babies and dogs and cats, and it was just a crazy time because you're getting used to the hustle and bustle of the New Jersey, New York area where people are honking their horn at you every day. So those days were not always easy, but hockey is a great equalizer. When I got in the locker room and saw how many great guys were there too, with Niedermeyer and Scott Stevens and Kenny Danico, I mean, boy, they had a good thing going there too. And so the transition was pretty seamless to join a veteran group like that.
And it worked well for you. You reached some milestones that year. You scored your 500th goal on January 17th against my buddy Kevin Weeks in Carolina. Your 1,000th career point in Pitt in February. And then you win your 3rd Stanley Cup, which was a crazy achievement, Joey. And I think we need to point this out. we've had guys, multiple guys win 3 Stanley Cups. We've seen some Montreal Canadiens win 10 plus. So that happens. But you won 3 cups with 3 different organizations, something only 11 guys in NHL history have ever accomplished. Does that boggle your mind even today when you think about that?
Yeah, that does. Gino, I'm not much of a guy for records or anything like that, but to be a part of a select group like that of only 11 players, and my buddy Mike Keenan is one of them too. And we talk about that from time to time. But that's a special feeling, and I'll talk a little bit about Mike Keenan too. What a great individual and great teammate he was. It's no secret that he could go to many teams and had the influence that he did. And he did that for us in Dallas too. I'll tell you a funny story. I remember we won the cup, and it's, of course, in Buffalo, it was the infamous no goal, Brett Hall. And, so by the end of the night, I think everybody was just ready to go home, and we won the cup, and it's legit to this day for me.
Sure it is.
But we went in there the next year, and of course, we knew it was coming. The fans were lining up and warm up with no goal, frauds, whatever. But we didn't realize that Mike Keane had wore his Stanley Cup ring underneath his glove for warm up. So we're in the lineup for 2-on-1s, and he's going around showing the fans all, his
That's
ring.
awesome.
That's the kind of guy Mike Keane was. So we had a great group of guys, and I feel very blessed that I'm one of that 11 group.
That was awesome. And another great, I assume a great blessing for you is, as briefly as it was, you got a chance to play in your hometown with the Leafs. What was that experience like for you?
So, it was maybe, aside from the Cups, it was probably the highlight of my career. I loved it. I grew up, I was the young kid when I was a kid in grade school, running to the typewriter to type Boreas Salming from Lanny McDonald and Daryl Sittler, and kept a log of that stuff. Maybe silly to admit that, but to come back to Toronto and put on that Maple Leaf every night was so special for me. Allowed my brothers and sisters and my dad to come and see me play, but just that electricity of my franchise team that I loved growing up, it was special. And then to meet Matt Sundin and to see he was probably the best captain I ever played with and one of the best teammates I ever played with. To have my buddy Gary there again, it was just awesome. The character of Ty Domi, it was a lot of fun, and we had a really good group. I was really sad that it was only 1 year, Gino, because I was under contract for a second year, and of course we didn't play that year. But I really felt that that's one of my biggest regrets, is that I thought we should have kept that team together coming out of the lockout. It didn't happen that way, and we all move on. But I really felt we had something special there that could have won.
Speaking of wearing the Maple Leaf on your chest, you got to represent Canada at a couple of Olympic Games. 1998 Nagano, things didn't go great there, where you guys got bumped by the Czech Republic in the semis. That was the infamous Gretzky didn't get to go in the shootout. You did, but we didn't get to go in the shootout. You were a part of that. And then you were part of Salt Lake. You're on U.S. soil. You're playing Team USA in their home arena. And one of the best gatherings of NHLers that we've ever seen, because remember, for a big chunk to our audience, a big chunk of Olympic game hockey, you weren't allowed to bring NHLers. But the group that you guys had together in 2002 in Salt Lake, beating the Americans in the gold medal game on their soil, what was it like being a part of all that?
Well, people ask me to this day, what's better, winning a cup or winning an Olympic gold medal?
It's nice, Joey, that you got to do both.
I'm very lucky, Gino, and I don't always know how to answer that question. The war and the 2-month grind of winning a Stanley Cup is, maybe you're vested a little bit differently than just a 3-week tournament. But to know that the entire country is watching, and it's been 50 years since Canadian team has won a gold medal. Those are things that are always in the back of your mind. And it couldn't have worked out any better to play our rivals, our NHL rivals, the USA, in the finals. And just that whole tournament, Mario being the captain, Wayne, the passion he showed, organizing that team, it was just one of the feathers in my cap that I cherish to this day.
Your trophy case must be amazing, which is great. You mentioned briefly about people asking you about would you ever get back into the game. For those who don't recall, you were the GM of the Dallas Stars from I think 2009 to 2013. So you had a management role, but that's years ago now. What was it like to be there in Dallas on a management level at that level? Because you also had other management roles, but that was your one GM role. And
Yeah.
do you think there's a day when your kids get older where you think we might see Joey Nieuwendyk back in some kind of involvement in the NHL?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I will go back to those days of being the GM in Dallas. It certainly was the closest thing to playing for me, and I know that GMs around the league would talk about that. You're invested, and it's a 24/7 job. You take it home with you. You're thinking constantly, and even for me, talking about family, I was at my kids' events and things, but I was always thinking and thinking about how you get the team better and stuff. When I was done, Gino, I didn't miss it. I was, because I retired from hockey in Florida, and I was working with Jacques Martin there in Florida. Went to Toronto a year later with Cliff, only for 1 year, Cliff Fletcher. And then I made my way to Dallas. Tom Hicks gave me a great opportunity. I was kind of fast-tracked, and I loved every minute of it, but I think I never really got a chance to breathe after I even retired from playing. And when I was done in Dallas, I thought, you know what? I get a chance to go watch my kid play hockey here and my girls dance. And I took a break, and I didn't miss it like I thought I would. I'll tell you a funny story. A few years later, probably 3 or 4 years ago now, the U18s were in Dallas, and Ronnie Francis, my good friend who I worked with a little bit in Carolina, he asked me to go to one of the games, and I did. And I don't want to throw any of my friendly GM buddies under the bus, but I thought, man, these guys look weathered. They're stressed, and they got gray hair going. And I thought, oh man, I don't miss that, Gino. And I'm so happy for all the success. A lot of them have had the guys that I knew well, like Doug Armstrong. But I'm happy in my life, Gino. I live here in Ithaca, New York, and part-time during the summers. The weather's beautiful. I spend a lot of time with my kids. Will I ever go back? I possibly will. My good friend Ronnie Francis is always asking me, and I stay close to watching what's going on around the hockey world. So I'm a little bit on the outside, but I'm not far away.
You do look good, though. I'll tell you what, I go to the GM meetings every year, and every year I see the guys. I'm like, man, are you okay? So, again, not to throw anybody to the bus, but I get that. Joey, it's been great catching up with you, buddy. Before I let you go, do you mind playing 5 fast facts with me? I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions. You give me 5 quick answers, okay?
All right, I'll do my best, Gino.
All right, here we go. Time now for 5 fast facts with 3-time Stanley Cup champion and a guy voted as one of the top 100 players of all time in the NHL, Joey Nieuwendyk. Joey, best teammate who you ever played with, who would that be?
Well, I got to go with my buddy Gary Roberts. We've known each other since we were 4 years old, and he'd be very upset if I didn't say him, so I'll go with him. We grew up together, three teams in the NHL, Gary Roberts.
Way to be politically correct. Who was the best coach you ever played for?
Best coach. I'll tell you my favorite coach, and I don't mind saying it, was Pat Burns the 1 year I had him in New Jersey. I just loved his presence. He treated the older guys well and was hard on the young guys, which I didn't mind. Ken Hitchcock, the guys I won with, Terry Chris, they were great coaches, and they were the coaches that we needed at the time. But my favorite one, Pat Quinn as well, great guy. But Pat Burns was my favorite in the short time that I had him.
Who did you hate playing against the most?
Well, I will say a couple guys come to mind. Chris Chelios, who was most of the time in a different conference, but he was not fun to play against, Gino. He was always slashing you in the ankles and doing this and that. I got to know him a little bit, but what a great competitor he was. And, Steve Smith out in Edmonton, those battles of Alberta, he played alongside my cousin, Jeff Bukaboom, but Steve was always hard. He was smart. He wasn't hard on Timmy Hunter or any of those guys. He was hard on me or Hawk and Lube or somebody, and he wasn't fun to play against either.
After all the success in your career, both on and off the ice, what's the one piece of advice you would have given yourself if you can go back and talk to 15-year-old Joey Nieuwendyk? What advice would you have given him?
Wow. Well, that's a good question, Gino. I guess just to really not look too forward into the future. I think my nature is to think too far ahead and to try and plan ahead, which wastes a lot of energy. I think it's important to really enjoy the moment each day. And I think there are probably times in my NHL career where I was a little stressed about stuff, or being a GM where I didn't need to be. It was all just useless energy being wasted. So maybe the advice I would give is to have fun each day and enjoy it, because you're doing what you love to do and it's not work.
One final question. If you hadn't become a pro hockey player, a successful Hockey Hall of Fame pro hockey player, what do you think you would have done for a career instead?
Another great question. I was very fortunate to be recruited by Cornell University, and I'm still living in their town. I've had my home here on the lake 28 years, and I wanted to leave my first 30 days here, Gino. I called my mom and dad every day to come and get me. It wasn't for me. There's a couple of guys who are dear to me, Mark Canduro and Dave Hunter, who really kind of took me under their wing the first few weeks of my college career. And they're actually coming here with Ronnie Francis in about 10 days to watch a Cornell hockey game. Those guys kind of took me under the wing and made it fun. And then once we got on the ice, I was fine and on my way. But had I not been a pro hockey player, I might have been back with my buddies in Whitby working at the GM plant. I don't know, Gino, but I'm happy the way it all turned out.
Joey, 5 Fast Facts with Joey Nieuwendyk. Joey, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this, man. You've been so generous of your time. It's been so great to catch up with you, my friend.
Gino, you too. It's great to see you, and I appreciate you having me on today.
One of only 3 players in NHL history to win 3 cups with 3 different teams. Conn Smythe Award winner, Hockey Hall of Famer, Joey Nieuwendyk has been our guest. The Overtime Podcast is proudly presented by Domino's Pizza and Athlete's Care. If you're watching the big game at home or hungry right now, Domino's has you covered. Check out the Domino's Mix and Match deal. Medium 2-topping pizzas, pastas, stuffed cheesy bread, boneless chicken, or classic chicken wings. Any 2 items for only $8.99 each. Canada's favorite pizza at Domino's.ca. Athlete's Care is proud to be celebrating its 26th year, offering sports medicine services to both elite athletes and the general population who require rehab for a new or chronic injury or pain. Go to where the best go. Athlete's Care Sports Medicine Clinics with 24 locations in the Greater Toronto Area and Ottawa. If you missed any parts of the show, don't worry. Visit our website at overtimepodcast.ca, where you can both listen and subscribe to future shows. The Domino's Pizza Overtime Podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. As well, please check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at O-Time Podcast. Until next week, I'm Gino Redis saying so long, hockey fans, and thanks for joining us on the Domino's Overtime Podcast.